Hello, Stephanie. Welcome back from the Chicago Marathon. I'm excited to have you on the show today, but congrats on your marathon experience.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And thanks. Yeah, Chicago was great. It was like I think that was my favorite marathon
Oh,
that
that's
I've ever run.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, we were talking before this, like kind of comparing it to some of the other majors and just like it's just well run. It's like the logistics are easier. The energy's great. So I'm glad you had a good experience. 'Cause I did too in 2019 when I ran it, and I would love to go back.
Yes, same. I didn't have a great race, but I had a great experience. And I think the fact that those two things can coexist speaks to like the energy on the course and everything.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I was just gonna say, it's a good race when you can like not have a good experience but still have a good experience. And that's also just the most therapist thing you could say. It's like it's both. It's not one or the
Both.
other.
Yes, yes, 100%.
That's awesome. And that's why you're here. So yeah, if you wanted to just kind of get started, if people don't know who you are already, if you could tell them who you are, where you're located, and what you do.
Yeah. My name is Stephanie Roth-Goldberg. I am a therapist who specializes in eating disorders and athletes and the intersection of those two things. I'm located in New Jersey and I see clients in New York, as well as I see folks virtually in those two states, South Carolina and Florida. Um, and I myself am a runner. I'm a sort of retired Ironman. Maybe when my kids are older, I'll come out of retirement.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, and I'm really passionate about helping folks like heal their relationship with either running or exercise in general, um, and have a healthy relationship to both food and exercise.
I love all of the information that you share on your social media pages. And I know we've got some mutual clients as well. And everyone always speaks so highly of you. I agree the intersection between runners and eating disorders, it's so valuable. I think when your therapist or your healthcare provider like kind of gets it when you are a runner. So I appreciate the personal, but also the expertise that you probably bring to your platforms.
Thank you. Thank you. Same. Yes. We have been following each other for a while, so I'm very excited we get to have this conversation.
Yeah, and both from New Jersey. Small world.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, I'm in New Hampshire now, but yeah, I'm from northern central Jersey. We were just there. Well, we were in South Jersey a week ago to visit my family, and the bagels aren't as good in South Jersey, but that's okay. Um,
Right. No, they're not. They're not.
they're not. But I kind of wanted to talk about the topic today. Um, there's a lot of like, it's part of the running culture, I think, on social media on how people want to say like things like running is my therapy. People are using running to manage and self-regulate like their mental health, and almost to use it as like a treatment for like anxiety, depression, and other mental health conditions that may or may not be diagnosed. And I know that you and I, as people who work in the healthcare space with runners, know that it's a bit more complex than that. Fortunately, unfortunately, we can't just typically use like one thing to manage complex health stuff. But I really wanted to dissect that because I think the argument around it, it's solid. Like some of it's based in science, right? Like exercise can be a very therapeutic tool. But there's a lot of nuance to where it's no longer an effective therapeutic tool. And just kind of, yeah, dissecting some of the information that's out there to help people feel their best. So I mean, just to kind of get started, like, do you want to talk a little bit about like, is running even a therapeutic tool? Like, how does exercise kind of help people manage their mental health?
Yes. And to sort of piggyback off what you just said, I will say it's absolutely a therapeutic tool, but I would never want a toolbox that has one tool in it. And I think that's where some of the cultural piece of like running is my therapy, end of story, is really problematic. But you're right, there's a lot of research how exercise in general, consistent exercise can help reduce levels of depression, anxiety. Different kinds of movements are really known to help with ADHD as well. Um, and while that is true, there are a lot of studies about when that tips the scale and when exercise becomes problematic. And, if exercise is your only tool, that's also a problem because injuries happen or life happens. And it's something that you might not be able to do every day. And so, yeah, I think some of it is born out of the research of we know that movement is really helpful for depression and anxiety, and that's not therapy.
Mhm.
Both those things are true. Maybe that'll be the theme of everything I say today is that both things can be true.
Two things can be true at the same time. No, I appreciate that because I do think that a lot of the times if I'm online talking about how running is not a replacement for therapy, people want to kind of come back with, but this research says, it's a really effective therapeutic tool. And I always think too when we're talking about like exercise benefits, I know a lot of the research and maybe like general headlines that are out there. Like they're talking about general population exercise. Like they're talking about 30
Yes.
minutes a day, like walking, maybe some light jogging, like kind of lower intensity exercise. And I know my audience, your audience, the people listening to this podcast are doing a lot more than that. um,
Yes.
oftentimes I think endurance athletes have a bit of a warped sense of like what a normal amount of exercise is or what feels like enough exercise to them because they've done really high like amounts of exercise. And I know you can probably relate to this too with your clientele. Like if I'll often have runners saying, I only ran 20 miles this week
Right.
when they're used to running 40. So it feels like a lot less to them. And physiologically it is, but compared to like what's recommended for the general population or what the general population is doing, it's still like such a high amount of activity. So I do think too, just drawing light on how, yes, exercise is good for mental health. And a lot of the times we're not necessarily talking about marathon training when we're talking about
No.
exercise.
And the studies are often done with a control group that is completely stagnant, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Like folks who are not exercising. So if you're comparing to someone who doesn't move at all, and then you introduce, to your point, a 30-minute walk or jog or, dance class, like the benefits will be great because you're getting chemicals in your brain that you were not otherwise getting. There's also a good amount of research how going outside is part of what helps with this. And no one talks about that when they're like, running is my therapy. It's like, but you could also sit on your front porch and get some of the same benefits of
Hmm.
not being in front of a screen, so yeah, I think it gets very warped online and in people's minds about what the benefits are.
Yeah, and just like interpreting like what the research is actually like applying to and saying. When you say like, yeah, when we're introduced to exercise, can you talk a little bit about like the chemical component of this? Like, why is it a good therapeutic tool for anxiety and depression and reducing symptoms there? Like, what is physiologically going on when we go for a run?
Well, there is that like the idea of endorphins, right? And what's interesting too about this is to compare folks who don't exercise a lot and to compare marathon training. The folks who are marathon training are not getting the same endorphin hit as people who don't exercise quite as regularly because our bodies have adjusted
Yeah.
to the routine. Um, but similar in a way, and this is not at all depression and anxiety can be a chemical, something chemically is happening in your brain. And
Hmm.
so getting a release of serotonin is really helpful. Getting an endorphin release is really helpful. It changes the chemicals in your brain. The same way, if you're anxious and you take a really deep breath, you've changed the oxygen that is going to your brain, which helps release different chemicals too and helps calm and regulate your nervous system. So that's part of what's happening in your brain during exercise is your body, you've changed the stimuli, you've changed the way in which you're breathing and the way oxygen's getting in and out of your body. And so your brain is reacting by releasing different chemicals. The runner's high is an interesting one here because, again, people who marathon train, you're not going to get the runner's high that often. Um,
No.
and So that's also a theory I like to sort of smash, like, oh, but you're not getting that often. The more you run, the less that happens, which is okay. You can train your body to go into a flow state, which is really helpful, but you can also do that while meditating.
Mhm.
Um, so I think thinking about even the way antidepressants work, they change the chemicals in your brain, and you can do that somewhat naturally by introducing movement, not at all in the same way as what medication does. But that's part of what is curative. But if you do if you look at the research, which I love, I feel like you're very good at picking apart research and breaking it down for
Thanks.
folks. Some of it is the routine, is being disciplined and getting up and breaking the habit of, let's say, the depressive who has a really hard time, again, getting outside, doing things for their mental health otherwise. So that is one of the other big benefits that some of the research speaks to, is just the idea that often when we take care of ourselves by exercising, we then, a lot of studies show, make different choices about what we eat or make different choices about when we go to sleep or how often we're drinking, and it has a domino effect. And so, which again, that's for the, let's call it like average population. Some of that stuff is very helpful. And that's also what the research speaks to.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think like, yeah, breaking the cycle like can be helpful if you're like, even if you are a runner, if you're waking up and you're looking at your phone, you're doom scrolling and you're like, God, now I'm really anxious, and instead we wake up and we go outside, even if it's to sit on the front porch and it's not even for a run. I think like breaking the cycle of that like is helpful. Um,
Yes.
yeah, I always think of it. I have a almost 2-year old and I think it's over, but he was sleeping until 7 for the first time in his life for like the past month. The past week, he's been getting up at 5 again. But for that month, it was great because I could still wake up at the same time that I've been waking up, except he's not awake yet. So I can just like go for a run or sit on the couch by myself and eat breakfast. And it's funny because it's like, when I wake up and go into mom mode right away, it feels like I'm being chased by a bear sometimes because it's just my toddler yelling at me or running around and causing chaos. But it's like if it's my choice to go run around in the dark outside, totally different mental space. um,
Yes. Well, and carving the space out for yourself if you're a
yeah.
parent or have a really high stress job is also really helpful for our overall anxiety and mood.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you diving into the physiological nature of that because I do think that's important. So like when we talk about how running is not the same thing as therapy, can you talk a little bit about like when I guess why? Like, why is running not the same thing as going to therapy? I know that's like a really loaded question because there's so many different like types of therapy and reasons people go to therapy. But can you talk about why those like tools are a little bit different in the toolbox? And then we can talk maybe about like when running's not a super effective therapeutic tool and what some like maybe even red flags are to look out for.
Yeah. So one way in which running is not therapy is that therapy is this time, it's a time you dedicate to speaking out loud to another human, things you often don't say to other people. And that in itself is really curative and helpful. And so even folks who are like, but I do a lot of good thinking on my runs. When I work with runners, I love when they're like, okay, we had a session and then whatever, Wednesday I went for a run and I was thinking about what we talked about and then I gained some further insight. But
Mm-hmm.
the act of speaking something out loud changes the way we relate to it. Having someone look at us and not feel judged and ashamed or, feeling understood are all part of the therapeutic process that obviously cannot happen by just pounding the pavement. And again, even if you're talking to friends, their relationship to you is different. They know you differently. Um, and what you might say to them is different, and what you might even be able to think about when you're with someone who is a friend versus someone who you're going to see. They are bound by confidentiality. is just, it's going to come out differently. And then there's the curative aspect of therapy in that if you were going to a behaviorist, let's say, there's like, here's the goal, here's what you're going to go home and work on. And it's really prescriptive. I don't
Mhm.
always work like that, but the relational aspect is healing. The idea that like you also have again, like an uninterrupted, the same way we just said, it's really helpful to make time for yourself to go out and run. It's really helpful to make time for yourself to go out and talk to someone, um, and to examine things differently. I think when you're in therapeutic space, you go there with the idea that you're going to examine your life in a different way. And you just simply can't do that by just running. And running is, even if you're running with other people, it's very much a solo endeavor, whereas therapy is a joint endeavor. You are trusting someone else to help you. And that person has an expertise in mental health that can point you in the direction of, either other resources or help you work things out in a way that they're trained to help you do. And you can't do that on your own.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think too, like some of the types of people that may be drawn to long distance running, may want to like, yeah, fix things on the run, mentally, or they feel like they solve problems on the run. I know sometimes this can look like rumination that's not actually problem solving.
Mhm.
It can look maybe not as effective as what you're going to be doing in therapy when someone with expertise is like walking you through a process. Yeah, so I think that differentiation is super helpful. I know we both work with clients who maybe have struggled with their relationship with exercise or their relationship with food, body image, have experienced eating disorders. And there's a lot, obviously, going into that can affect how you are in your fitness journey. If you're underfueled, are you getting injured? Is your energy level suffering? We know underfueling can like even trigger some extra like anxiety and depressive type
Mhm.
symptoms. Um, when it comes to us saying things like exercise and running can be therapeutic tools, like when does it start to not be? Like when can it be more of like an issue that needs to be addressed and maybe reevaluated to have a better relationship with exercise?
Yeah, it's funny. I teach a course on this particular topic, like what is excessive exercise? How is it defined? And one of the biggest red flags that I talk about is if exercise is your only coping skill, if that's the only way you can regulate yourself, that's a big red flag. Um, because you can't, let's say, leave a meeting with your boss who made you feel bad and go for a run, right? Like we need to be able to have other tools at the ready to deal with to deal with hard things. And you can, for the most part, it's mostly recommended to exercise one time a day. So you need other ways to manage your feelings. But it's a red flag that I talk about a lot that like if this is your only coping skill, that's a problem. Rigidity is another red flag. And it's so nuanced when you're talking to endurance athletes because as we know, there is a certain amount of, let's say, runs you want to get in before you go on the endeavor of running a marathon. So, okay, there's a plan, but the rigidity is in if you wake up and you feel sick, are you pushing through and running? Can you change? Let's say your son woke up at 5, you were expecting him to wake up at 7. Can you move that run to a different day because your day
Mhm.
got derailed and not think about it all day, not ruminate on it, not feel guilt or bad that something got in the way of your run or
Mhm.
other exercise. So that's a big one too. And here's another one that's nuanced, is like putting the exercise ahead of everything else, which many folks are like, well, you have to be disciplined, you have to have a plan, and that's true. But again, we have to be flexible. If an opportunity for socializing or seeing family or work related that feels exciting comes up, we want you to be able to have a healthy debate about should I move my training session and whatever, go to dinner with my coworkers. Um, some of the other red flags that you and I are very familiar with are how much are you tying food to exercise, and can you divorce those two things? And again, obviously, you need fuel to train, but we don't want you counting every macronutrient that's going into your body as a way to earn the food or plan the exercise around. And what are your intentions? This is another big one with it. Um, and how much do you identify as whatever we'll say said runner, right? If that's your only identity, that's a problem too. Running through injury, I could really keep going, but
Keep going.
yeah, yeah. Running through injury is a big one. And
Yeah.
something that people don't recognize as much is also not being able to tell when you're injured, like being so disconnected from your body that you don't feel an injury coming on, which a lot of folks I work with are pretty high level athletes, let's say. And so they'll say, "What I know to push through pain." And like we have to be able to distinguish what is a pain that requires us not to push through. Like I always say, like your body kind of knocks before it screams at you. And we want to be able to be connected enough with our body and like which requires our nervous system to be regulated enough, even if it's after your run, to go
Mhm.
like, oh, that feels like a shin splint, not actually just like my legs are fatigued.
Mhm.
But to like inhabit your body in a way that you can make those distinctions. And when you don't, that's also a red flag that you're not really connected.
Mhm.
Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I mean, I think that's really helpful because I think part of what makes people good athletes is being able to push through at certain times, like being disciplined, being dedicated, like, having a good mindset around things. But there's definitely like, yeah, like a point where we cross the threshold and it's no longer serving us well, or it's even hurting us. And that's like the rigidity, like you talked about, really freaking out if you have to move around your training schedule, having the anxiety or rumination over that, even if you do choose to move your training schedule, like really
Mhm.
take up a lot of space in your mind. I would add to like if there's a lot of fear around just taking regular rest days or taking regular off
Oh, I
seasons.
can't believe I
And
didn't talk about that.
yeah, I mean, you talked about literally everything else. So,
Yeah.
but like, recovery, I think is a really big, it's a key pillar to training. So I know a lot of the times if you can't recognize that as a key pillar to training, in addition to eating enough too, like we're not just talking about like you're a dedicated athlete anymore. Like we're talking about, okay, the exercise is maybe excessive. The intentions are not maybe in alignment with what's going to be good for you. And I think that can be helpful too, because yeah, if it's like really ruining your mental health to not exercise, like you said, we have to have other tools and other components of our identity. I really like that you brought up the identity piece.
Yeah, and it's funny, I like blanked on the rest day, but I think that's another really big one. It's like if you're incapable of taking regular rest days, to me, it's also a sign you need help. Like I think something I
Yeah.
see on social media a lot is like, just take a rest day. And it's like your body and your nervous system at a certain point has also tipped over to like being just on that hamster wheel. So you probably need a lot of help planning out a rest day. It's going to be, if it's like too hard to take it, I think that's not only a red flag, but it's a sign that you really need assistance from someone to help you kind of untangle yourself from the excessive exercise that your brain has also become accustomed to and
Uh-huh.
needs a moment to like your nervous system needs to get used to taking a rest day too.
Can we talk about the process of that? I love that example. um, I've experienced that too. Like I think there's a lot of yes, just eat the food, just take the rest day, like type of messaging on social media. And I think there's a big barrier for some people on actually like doing that. And I think when even some people do that, there's like a ton of discomfort that can come with that. Can you talk a little bit about how, like you said, seeking out the extra support, like what processes you might help walk people through to like learn how to sit with that discomfort to a degree where it just becomes part of what they do? Because I've experienced that myself where like I used to hate the taper, I used to hate the recovery period after a marathon. I hated taking rest days. I did all of that anyway, but I was like, yeah, like the whole time sitting through it, like a little bit of a basket case. And now it's something I just like look forward to. And I'm like, oh, thank God, like this sounds great. And, I can be more flexible with it. And I know what my process looked like, but I'm curious to hear about like some things you think help people navigate that, because I know that can be really intimidating.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's helpful is having people recognize, like, what are your beliefs around a rest day? First, let's dissect those.
Mhm.
Um, and really, like, again, this is where like running isn't just, it can't just be therapy. Like, I'm like, let's speak them out loud. Like, if I say them back to you, what would you tell me? Let's really dissect this. Let's bring in some science, some psychoeducation, and then also, what are you feeling in your system when you think about taking a rest day? And something I'll do with folks, I'm trained in EMDR, which is a somatic based therapy. And one in which your nervous system is brought in is I will have someone sit in my office and like will do the work to get them to sort of bring up in their nervous system, what does it feel like for you on that rest day? Like, and what do you think that you need? Because oftentimes we don't slow down enough to think like, here's what I need. I need an actual plan. A lot of people think that it's nice to take a rest day on a weekend, but actually, for many people, it's helpful to start on a weekday where you don't have, where you have things distracting you, you're participating in, either your job or your parenting or whatever, so that you're like, okay, I have other things going on.
Mhm.
And here are the things that I need to do. And I'm sure you've heard me talk about this before. I really love working with folks on making what I call like a rest day basket. Um,
Mm.
and getting any kind of box or basket and like let's put some tools in there. Let's put a list of friends that you might want to catch up with that you could call. Let's put a journal in there so you remember when you're feeling like you need to move, you can write about that and you can wait to like ride that wave of emotion till it passes.
Mhm.
Like maybe you make a list of other things, like, okay, put on a meditation. Uh, if you're someone who likes to like do their hair, do their nails, put something in your rest day basket like that. Maybe put your foam roller, put your Kindle or a book in there that you want to read. Things that you're going to look at and go like, here's a bunch of stuff I could be doing right now.
Mhm.
Um, because when you're feeling so anxious, it's hard to remember what else might help you. But if you plan ahead, that's really helpful. Um,
Mhm.
and I do advocate for a lot of times the like full rest day, not the like, I'm going to go to Pilates and I'm going to
Yeah.
swim and call it a rest day. Like your whole nervous system needs to learn how to actually rest.
Mhm.
Um, Another thing I ask folks to do is really start ranking their sleep when they incorporate a rest day.
Mhm.
Because again, once you can calm your nervous system down, it usually helps you sleep throughout the week overall better because your
Mhm.
system's not such on like high alert all the times. And then you have your own data to show, okay, actually, yeah, I did sleep better on Wednesday than I did last week when I didn't take a rest day or um but I will work with folks to really like bring in their nervous system and think about how we can calm it down and what each individual has access to and who's in their support system. And
I love all of that. I think something that a lot of runners are not great at, myself included, is like, yeah, just sitting still and like just being with your emotions or like your thoughts or your feelings and not always being in motion or distracted or in fight or flight mode or productive, I think is a big one too. Like, I think that's really hard. And it's something that I try to reframe for people. If you feel like you're not good at it, like, let's get good at it.
right, like
um,
make that a training goal.
yeah, exactly. Like, okay, I know like the Nike ads, the social media are going to be like, the grit is in showing up to your training no matter what, but it sounds like the harder thing for you is to rest. So like do the hard thing.
Yeah.
um, and I think it only helps you as an athlete physiologically, but also just mentally and psychologically, like have better game, like when you're out there, and the hard parts do come up in the marathon or in the training run. Something that you said Two is like having the rest day maybe at first be during the week, like maybe when there isn't as much stillness, because sometimes the weekend, if it's a bit unstructured, can be harder. Yeah, I really like that approach because I think that's true for a lot of athletes where that might be like, yeah, like a soft approach to like incorporating
Yeah.
some stillness. Like I know it's to be expected when you first start to incorporate like rest days or when you first start to work on that stillness. Like, yeah, sometimes your body and your brain really fight you and it feels a lot worse at first. How do you help people kind of like navigate sitting through that? Because I think that a lot of the times what I've heard from athletes, if I have, for example, like an Ironman who hasn't taken a day off in 10 years, and, you know, I try to get them to add in a rest day, it feels awful
Yeah.
for like kind of a long time until it starts to feel good. Like, how do you help people navigate that? Because I think that's when a lot of people want to tap out.
Yeah, I think that there's two things. One is I really try and get them again to like think about ways that you can be with your body that feel, to use your word, productive to you, but you're not doing on a day that you're not resting. And a lot of that is the recovery stuff. Like just stretch a little, go into a child's pose, like actually incorporate your body that's feeling so uncomfortable and tend to it, right? Like, um, in the same way, I'm like, that's not necessarily your body telling you you need to move. It's saying it's uncomfortable. So, like, let's think about, can you move around, but in a really gentle way? And can you do some deep breathing, change the oxygen that you're getting into your system, and reevaluate how you're feeling? A lot of times, what's really helpful is doing a visual. Like, I will work with my clients on doing the visual of riding a wave because that's really what's happening in our system. Like, picture a surfer. He's waiting, and that's kind of what your body feels like it's doing. And then it's like the wave comes, that's your anxiety. That's your like need to move, and you have to breathe through it, and then it breaks. Like, really visualize that. I also think if you can get someone to do something with their hands, and I mean anything, you could go out and garden, you could color. I love coloring. Um, you could journal, which is another great thing, but like actually moving your body and like connecting your body and brain to do something, and it could be painting your nails,
Mhm.
um, is helpful because you're concentrating on a task. You're doing something, but you're allowing your body to mostly be still at the same time. The other thing I do is I'm like, let's bring some science in here. Find me a pro athlete who doesn't have a rest day. Like, let's
Mhm.
look to some of the pros who, they know what they're doing. This is their job. Find me one, and I'm like, and if you want to spend your rest day researching that, that's a great project.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's a pillar. It's a huge pillar of performance. It's something too that you had said like is the kind of the brain adjustment. So like when you are used to a certain amount of exercise, like your brain's used to getting a certain amount of chemicals. I know that gets it gets used to that over time and you don't necessarily get the same runner's high over time that you maybe did when you started out. How long does it take the brain to like adjust up or down when you change how much exercise you're getting? I know some of the conversation I've heard is like around after you do a marathon, there's kind of like a come down.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to learn a little bit about that and just I feel like it kind of helps people almost understand how long the wave is going to last, if that makes sense. But yeah, you tell me.
Well, the wave of like emotion that I'm talking about is one that like why it, why a wave is a good idea is like it keeps coming, especially like as you get used to it. And then like the more you get used to it, like you're saying now, I'm always like, oh, good, my rest day is tomorrow. Can't wait to
Hmm.
sleep. Um, it's interesting. I don't know of any research that really tracks this, and I think probably because there's all sorts of ways that we reduce our exercise. Maybe it's that we
Mm,
waste and then we recover, and but our body, we reduce the exercise a little bit beforehand, then we had the race,
mm,
then we come back down. Whereas I'm someone who, when someone I'm working with is an endurance athlete and they get injured and then they feel really down, I will often say, maybe you do want to speak to a psychiatrist because again, your body's used to, this is like higher level athletes, but still like your body's used to getting a certain amount of brain chemicals daily, and now that is taken away. So it makes a lot of sense that you feel down, both from the structure that your life was created around for this season
Mhm.
and your brain chemistry. Um, and so, but I don't know of any research studies that really show, and I think this speaks to the identity piece too. If you
Yeah.
have broader identity, I think it is a lot easier to not feel as down when your movement is disrupted or a planned break in your training because you can lean into those other aspects of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so true. I also think kind of like you said at first, like having different tools in your toolbox, it's like you can have favorite tools. Like running can be your favorite tool, but it still can't be the only tool. So I do think it's okay to be like, I'd really rather be training for a marathon right now, but I'm injured and I have a stress fracture, so I can't. So I'm gonna lean on these other tools that I have, instead. And I don't like them as much, but like they're helpful. I feel
Yes.
like that shift is helpful too, because I'm not here to just be like, yeah, you should just be fine with not running. Like I don't think that's realistic when you're applying it to any activity that you enjoy doing. Of course, you'll be sad that you're not doing it. But I do think, yeah, like you said, having different options can be helpful. I also want to talk a little bit about too, like when when we talk about social media and what's like normalized, running is my therapy is a hashtag that's been like normalized for a long time, even though it's not necessarily true. We've got people running multiple marathons per year, trying to run all the world majors, trying to do them all in a year. We've got people training hard all the time. And a lot of what's shared on social media, of course, is like a highlight reel of these concepts. And I think it definitely, no pain, no gain, like all of those slogans that are thrown around like badges of honor on the internet.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's really easy for people to get caught up in that and feel like, oh yeah, I have to be doing that too. And if I'm not, like I'm not doing it right, or I'm not normal, or I'm going to lose all my fitness, or whatever, the belief is. And it sounds like dissecting some of those beliefs with people is helpful because I mean, you and I both know too on social media, like it's just a lot of it's just not even true. Like if they're just lies.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, 100%. And it's funny, I said this before we started recording, but I'll say it again. I ran the Chicago Marathon just a few days ago, and I kept seeing these signs like, did therapy not work? And I was like, no, therapy worked. That's why I'm here, right? Like, because I think there's the other side of it where it's like, it's really cool that I'm committed to doing something I love. I like have navigated, being a mom. I was a runner before I was a mom, like therapy helped me fit it into my life, not feel guilty, like create a community around running, and all of that was possible
Yeah.
because of therapy. But the amount of signs I saw that were like, didn't you could have just gone to therapy and like I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Like I wish
Yeah.
people were like, oh, I can use my therapy to become a more well-rounded runner or like I had therapy today and I didn't do great on my race, as I said, and I was really happy to have a space that I felt like I'm not taking away from anyone else by talking about this. And, you know, I love my husband and he will talk to me forever about it, but I know he does not want to hear about my race anymore. Um, and so I'm like, no, therapy is a great tool as a runner also to have.
Yeah.
So I do wish more people were talking about that on the internet.
I do
Um,
think too, like little like jokes like that, like, oh, did the therapy not work? Like they're just like little like micro, like they just pick away at this, they create a stigma like against therapy, medication, like tools that are really helpful for people. And it makes you feel like, oh, things aren't that bad. I don't have to do that. Or like am ashamed if I have to do that. And it's just like the little things like that that kind of I think add up and build a belief system that keeps someone from like going to therapy in the first place or seeking that extra help that you were talking about in a variety of ways. And yeah, I agree. I mean, as a runner, I can like kind of chuckle at the sign because I'm like, Yeah, I get that the fact that I'm out here is like a little bit nuts, but I love it and I also go to therapy. So like I wish, as a healthcare provider, I'm like, "Ugh, really, like come on."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do, but the other thing I do work with, like when folks are having a hard time resting
Mhm.
or they're injured, I'm like, let's mute all of those people that you follow
Yes.
who are whatever, running all the world majors or um, running multiple marathons a year. Like, you know, whether those things and to your point, a lot of the times it's not true. I mean, I think people for the most part don't lie about like running an actual marathon, but all of the things that they talk about, it's just a highlight reel. I also think like the people who are running all the world majors, like good for them, but the access you have to be able to do that, especially with the newer ones that are
I
beyond
know.
far away. It's like, if that makes you feel bad, like just unfollow that person.
Mhm.
There's no benefit. Like, what benefit are you getting from following this person is also a really helpful question for people.
Yeah. I think there's a difference on curating your social media feed as like keeping yourself in a bubble and like, being afraid to be quote unquote triggered by anything and being like, okay, I'm going to curate my feed so that it's productive and helpful and supportive for like what I'm working on right now and what I enjoy seeing. And also, if something pops up, I have to be able to recognize what's not for me.
Yes.
um, and be able to kind of sit with the discomfort it might bring up and move on from it. And I think that is a art and act that's definitely lost. In the current day and age of social media feeds. But it's hard. It's hard when you're bombarded with like, when you want to follow runners on Instagram and like the thing that's quote unquote in and like normalized in culture. And to be honest, gets a lot of likes and views in the algorithm. So a lot of creators prioritize their actions towards it is running marathon majors. When I run the Boston Marathon, my business, phew, like it kind of goes up, just around the success and participation in that race because people don't understand how the algorithm works. When you are seeing people at Boston or at Chicago or the world majors, like it sees you pause and read their post or like it or whatever, and it's just going to keep feeding you more things like it.
Yeah.
Um, so when 50,000 runners are participating in it and sharing about it, like it is kind of flooding people's feeds. Something I work on with my clients when I'm trying to help them like not revenge sign up for the next race because they didn't like how their race went, or maybe they loved how their race went and they don't want to lose the fitness, so they want to keep going. Is I'm like, okay, we need to wait like at least 4 to 6 weeks before we sign up for another marathon because I need you to keep feeling that way once like the algorithm has died down, once the emotions from the race have died down, once your body's recovered a little bit more to see if you actually want to go do that again. And also for the people who have a lot of fear of missing out, FOMO around not running those races, I'm like, Monday's gonna come and the algorithm's gonna change to something different. Like, see if you still care. Don't
Yeah.
enter the lottery if you don't want to go. Um, because I always think that phenomenon's super interesting. Just you go in social media and it's like the Chicago Marathon was this week. So there was a ton of info on the Chicago and I contributed it to it as well, even though I wasn't even there. And then Monday comes and there's no more Chicago Marathon information on Instagram. So
Right.
it's like, I do think, yeah, there's a lot of influence on social media too on what's normalized. And I just want to, yeah, I don't know, remind people that they don't have to do what everyone else is doing.
And to your point, like not every message is for you. Like I
Yeah.
think lots of times people really make very firm statements. You should never do this, or you should always do this. And you're like, that's not true of me. And that's okay. I don't have to like discount everything this person says, or maybe I have to say, like, okay, I don't need to follow this person or whatever. And like, just like really pausing and thinking about how you respond to these things is helpful. I like that
Yeah.
idea, like you're saying, like, just wait a month, see how you feel.
Yeah. Because so many people will sign up for something that week and then they get 4 weeks into training and they're like, I'm tired. I
Right,
don't want to
right,
do this.
right, right.
um, yeah, no, I agree. I think, yeah, just not all of your thoughts are true and not everything on social media and the internet is true. And we can leave it
Yes,
there.
yes, yes.
Um, I mean, in terms of kind of wrapping this up, do you have anything else to add in terms of just like what you see people struggling with when it comes to exercise and trying to use running as like one of their only coping mechanisms and how to move past that?
Yeah, this isn't totally an answer to your question, but it's like a backwards answer to your question. One thing I always say to people, like in my personal life, whatever, you know, online, if you are thinking maybe this is a problem, like maybe I should talk to someone about it, you should talk to someone about it. Like, you know, that's that insight is worth paying attention to. So I think that most of the time, folks who are kind of stuck in that excessive exercise sort of bubble are like there is usually a time where they're like, oh, I would have loved to go to my niece's birthday if I just didn't have to do that run, and they like have an inkling, maybe I should talk to someone about this. And so I think when you have that inkling, if you can give it a little more light and you can pay attention to it, it really helps. That first sign of, do I need help with this? Not ignoring that. I think that's one thing. And I think, we always, you and I both are like, stop comparing yourself to other people, stop comparing yourself to other people. But if you find yourself comparing yourself to other people and you're like, wow, everyone feels a little more flexible than me. I wish that I could have, whatever, gone to that dinner, stayed up late, gone to bed early, any of those things. And you're looking around at the people that you trust in your actual life, again, not online, you're like, huh, everyone seems to be having a little bit of an easier time. Talk to them about it. Like, a little bit of, get vulnerable, or think about, like, no, I'm really struggling to eat. Like, maybe I should call that RD who my friend used and seemed to help her. Maybe I should ask someone, for a therapy recommendation, because usually you have an inkling, and it's the one time that comparison sometimes can be helpful if you kind of feel like, huh, I wish I could be a little less rigid, a little more flexible, or eat a little more to my fullness. Like if you're on a run with folks and you're the only one not taking gels, like take that information, ponder it, and think about, like, maybe I need help with this. I'm really struggling, and I see that maybe I'm the one kind of that's struggling with this.
Yeah, and I think like just the action taking aspect of that is so powerful because like you said, it's the difference between you kind of having this conversation in your head and saying it out loud. Um,
Yeah.
like it makes a really big difference and it kind of moves you in some forward momentum towards your goals, essentially. I think I could talk to you forever, but I also just want to go off of that too. Like, I think some of the fears people have over taking the action, we could probably do a whole podcast episode on this, but am I going to lose all my fitness? Am I not going to be a runner anymore? Am I not going to marathon train anymore? Are they going to tell me to stop exercising? Am I going to gain weight? Am I going to be unhealthy? Am I going to go crazy? Like, I think there's a lot, like an endless list of, of fears that I think really prevents people from taking care of themselves and like actually taking action to get
Yeah.
better. Is there anything you would like to say to those people who are kind of in that fear holding pattern?
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything else, like you wouldn't go on one date in your whole life and decide this is the person I have to marry, right? Like if you are really worried about that, test the waters, like meet with someone, or and meet with a few people, and not to find the message you like per se, but to make sure you connect and can respect what the person is saying.
Yeah,
Because those fears, I think, if you can pay attention to them, they're really like keeping you stuck. And it's like,
exactly.
then it's a circular problem. And I also think that's where I was saying, like, if you have a friend or someone you even know who has done something like use a sports RD they like, or see a therapist they like, most often people are really happy to share that information. And maybe you can't share therapists, that might be different, but a lot of times it's like, how did you find your therapist? Or can you ask your therapist for a recommendation? Like, I really don't want to stop running, but I know I need help with this.
Mhm.
Um, and so again, I think that idea of like speaking the fear out loud to someone you feel safe with also like makes it much less scary. It's kind of like being in a dark room and turning on the light.
Hmm.
And you want to do it with someone you feel safe with, and maybe that's someone, that you follow on Instagram and you want to like DM me or Holly, and we're happy to help you find someone. I
Totally.
think that the speaking it out loud and giving it a little bit of light is really healing in itself.
I agree. I love that. I love that you said that. And like you said, it's like for me personally, when people come to me and they're like, I don't have my period, or I think I have a problem with exercise, or I'm not eating enough, or I'm under fueling, or whatever it is, like I'm rarely just like, shut it down. Like, stop doing
Right.
everything you love. Like, I know how traumatic that can feel. Like, if it's a medical emergency, that's different and that does happen. But a lot of the times if you're working with someone who is an athlete who kind of gets it, like we understand the pros and cons of like reducing exercise, of doing it in a strategic way, of adding more food, of doing that in a strategic way, and like setting you up for success. Like it's probably not as scary as you think it is. um
Right.
it's probably really helpful, so I just want to like push people in that direction too.
Yes. Yes.
That me and Stephanie both like run and want you to keep loving running and loving doing the things that you're doing. And we just want you to feel better about it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. In terms of work, people can find you because you've got a lot of great resources too on the internet that I would like them to fill their algorithm with. Where can people find you if they want to work with you or at least be in your bubble?
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, my website is my initials, srgpsychotherapy.com. But the biggest social channel I use is Instagram, embodied psychotherapist. Follow me there, DM me. I have links. I didn't even promote this. Speaking of rest days, I did spend a long time making a rest day coloring book. You can get that in the link too, because you should do something with your hands on a day when you're struggling to rest.
Love that.
But yeah, follow me on Instagram, reach out to me, and my website, srgpsychotherapy.com.
I love that. And now I'm going to ask you the end of the podcast question. So maybe it wasn't quite the experience at Chicago, but still a very epic finish line. Say you're finishing your race. It was like the best race ever, best day ever. What song would be playing to embody how you're feeling in that moment at the finish line?
This is funny because it was the start of Chicago, which I think was part of the problem. I went out like really very fast. Would be like probably Turned Down for What by Little John.
No
Um,
one said that before. That's such a good one.
it is such a good one. My son loves that song. And
Nice.
I was like thinking of him too. And I was like, this is such a great song to start to. But the truth is, it's a really good song to finish to.
Absolutely. That's a great song. Well, I love that answer. And I'm surprised no one said that because that's like a really great pump up song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, I hope your recovery keeps going well. And thank you so,
Yeah.
so much for coming on the show to talk about this. I think it'll be really helpful for a lot of people.
Yes. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.